Joy-Con style replacement joysticks are pretty useful for a number of different situations. If you need a gaming setup where you don't have the space, you don't have the ability to have the long throw that you would. Here's a traditional joystick. You can see it's quite a bit bigger, and it's taller and everything else. The Joy-Con is just generally smaller. It's a lot less tension to move it around and whatnot. The downside of it is it does use the ribbon cable, so you do need an adapter. But other than that, it's a pretty neat little stick. And what I've come across is users who need different setups, different toppers, where they can't use the standard rubber topper or any of the ones that you could find on Amazon or whatnot. So earlier I had made joysticks where they include a stick mechanism. So it's called the Joy-Con stick. So it bolts on to the Joy-Con and gives you some additional length to work with. Well, I also encountered situations where folks wanted to use their feet, in particular their big toe, to activate a Joy-Con. They wanted to use a Joy-Con versus like a PS2 stick because they wanted something smaller, easier to move, less range, and generally smaller size so that we can positioning, because positioning and mounting is always a big deal. So the technique that I use with these is I take the Joy-Con replacement stick, and the first thing I do is I remove the rubber cap off of the top of it. And these are real easy to do. You just use a pair of needle nose pliers and gently pop it off. And that reduces the size of what you have to work with. Otherwise, you're stuck with this rubber thing that's a little bit too big for our use. And then what I do is I have 3D printed parts, and here's an example. These are printed in halves, and they're mirrors of it. They aren't even mirrors of each other. They are the same part, just one goes on the left, one goes on the right. And it's designed so that the Joy-Con slips into here, and you have the two sides. So the two sides come together like that, and then they are held in place with two small screws, one on each side. So that holds it in place. Now this allows me to make some sort of custom topper that just wouldn't be available. In this case, this one is 25 millimeters in diameter, about an inch, and it has a concave surface so that the user can more easily hold their big toe in place. And here's one where I've assembled a test prototype where, and this is printed in white in this case. So you could see it still has all the range of a Joy-Con, but it has that bigger topper with that nice big concave surface in there to work with. Now, one thing you want to be careful with putting toppers on these is that the spring mechanisms inside the Joy-Con replacements are not as strong as the spring mechanisms in a PS2 style joystick. So you can't go too big with it. If you go too big, then the spring loses its ability to return to center, and you want it to return to center. So if you're making these, make sure when you're doing the test to hold them like this with the joystick perpendicular or parallel to the ground, perpendicular to this axis, so that you could see if it does any drooping. You don't want it to droop. You want it to make sure that it returns from all directions okay. And I found that about an inch, maybe an inch and a half, is about as big as you can go with these custom toppers for these sticks. Otherwise, they just become too loose. So this is an example of using the Joy-Con to allow a user to use their toe to manipulate a game. And while this is going to be on one of my joysticks, think about this. You could take a standard Joy-Con controller, peel off the rubber top, and because this just bolts on with two screws, it could be used to modify an existing stick. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're looking for the models or whatnot, just ask me and I'll provide them to you. but it gives you some more options that you may not normally have with this sort of stick. Thanks for watching.